Meeting to order. Oh, there's Gary. Just before we get started tonight, just for those people, the applicants this evening and anyone watching at home, I'm just going to go through the protocols for tonight's meeting that we're going to go through. So tonight we have 7 applications that we're going to be hearing, and the following will be the procedure that will follow for the meeting. Copies of the notices have been sent to neighboring property owners and have been posted on the properties that are in question. So the first order of business will be to ask any committee members if they have any disclosures of conflicts of interest or pecuniary interest. We'll do that first. Follow that, we'll ask for any requests or withdrawals of applications that are on the agenda from the applicants. The committee secretary treasurer will then read out each application on the agenda and give a brief description of the application along with staff recommendation and any correspondence that's been received since the writing of the staff recommendation. The applicant or the agent for the applicant will be asked to introduce themselves. We'll bring them into the meeting. Because the setup will ask at the start, as soon as they come into the meeting, whether they wish to withdraw or defer their application at that point prior to proceeding. Then the applicant will have an opportunity to provide any additional information that they wish at that time. Members of the committee will then have the opportunity to ask the applicant any questions that they have, followed any members of the public that wish to speak to an application. I've been advised that currently no one has registered to speak to applications this evening. I don't think that'll change between now and then, but you never know. I'll check before we get to that stage. If there are applicants or people that wishes to speak to an application, they'll be brought into the meeting. They can ask their questions. We'll try to get them to present all their questions and comments within a 10-minute time frame. And then we'll go to the next person if there is one. Following that, the applicant will have an opportunity to have some closing comments if they so desire. And then the committee will then present a decision in the form of a motion. The motion will be discussed and voted upon. The vote is tied, a motion will be defeated, and a new motion will be made. It should be noted that notices of decision will only be provided to those persons who have left their names with the Secretary Treasurer and the Planning Department. Please contact David Schultz at planner@portcolborne.ca or leave a voicemail at 905-835-2901 extension 202 immediately following this meeting. And that includes anyone that happens to be watching, even though you didn't participate at the meeting. If you're watching online and still wish to be sent a notification, you can do that. It should also be noted that in order to be advised of any possible local planning tribunal hearings, you must request to be sent a copy of the committee's decision. So with that, I'll ask if there's any conflicts of interest this evening. I can see all members there, so you can either raise your hand or speak. Gary, I see Gary's raising his hand. Gary, do you want to? We're not hearing you at the moment if you're trying to. Doesn't look like you're muted, Gary, but we can't hear you. Little technical difficulties there with Gary and his sound.
Looks like he might be trying to call in. No.
Still can't Gary to connect. Gary, if you can hear me, can you give me a thumbs up? Nope, doesn't look like you can hear us. All right, so with that, before we get to the first application, just in case he has a conflict with the first one, we will stop and make sure before we get to that point. Now, I know So with that, we have the first application coming up, but before we get started, there was a request earlier that was emailed to me through staff. Did you want to wait until we get to that particular application and we can raise it at that point?
Yeah, I think that would be best.
Okay. All right, so with that, we just need to wait for Gary just in case his conflict was with the first application. Gary, can you hear us at home? Still looking down.
He just texted me and stated that he has no sound. He can't hear anyone.
Okay.
So we should get him to sign out and come back in.
Yeah, we can try that.
Yeah, he's going to do that right now.
Okay.
If that doesn't work, you can always call in.
Yes, I'll have to let him know. I'm using my phone as my video, so I'll have to get off my video and use it. Contact him.
He also says that he can't see himself on the screen.
Oh. Sounds like he's going to be better off to phone in.
Should we take a small recess until Gary's back?
Yeah.
Yeah, we should, just in case he has a conflict with the first application. I don't want to start with him having that conflict.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Application, please.
Yes, I can. Just one second. We're gonna go? Okay. Okay, so our first application tonight is application number B04-21-PC. In the matter of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, Chapter P13, Section 53(1), and in the matter of the lands legally known as Concession 1, Part Lot 33 on Plan 59M 426, in the former municipality of Humberstone, now the City of Port Colborne, Regional Municipality of Niagara, municipally known as 6 Limestone Court. And in the matter of an application by the owners Lester Schultz Limited for a lot boundary adjustment under Section 53(1) of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, Chapter P13, so as to permit the conveyance of Part 2, having a lot frontage of 2 meters with a total lot area of 120.8 meters squared on Limestone Court for a proposed lot addition to the abutting Part 3. Part 1 will retain a lot frontage of 12.73 meters on Limestone Court, with a total lot area of 948.8 meters squared for a future residential use. Planning staff has reviewed the referenced application and offer the following comments. From public comments, notice was circulated on February 23rd, 2021, and no written correspondence has been received. For agency comments, notice was circulated on February 23rd, 2021, and the following has been received from Drainage. In that they have no objection to the above application. Correct that. The parcel is in the watershed of the Eagle Marsh Drain. The Eagle Marsh Drain is currently undergoing a new report, and any changes will be completed through this process. No further action is required. Planning staff recommend that consent application B04-21-PC be granted subject to the following conditions outlined. The following conditions, sorry. 1, that the applicant provides the Secretary Treasurer with the deeds in triplicate for conveyance of the subject parcel or a registrable legal description of the subject parcel, together with a paper copy and electronic copy of the deposited reference plan, if applicable for use in the issuance of a certificate of consent. 2, that a final certification fee of $212 payable to the City of Port Colborne be submitted to the Secretary Treasurer. 3, pursuant to Section 5012 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, it is hereby stipulated that Section 53 or 55 shall apply to the subsequent conveyance of or other transaction involving the identical subject parcel of land. For the following reasons: 1, the application conforms to the policies of the Regional Official Plan, City of Port Colborne Official Plan, and will also comply with the provisions of Zoning Bylaw 6575/30/18 as amended. 2, this decision is rendered having regard to the provisions of subsection 5124 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990 CP13. And that concludes the correspondence for this application.
Thank you. Can we bring the applicant in to the meeting? The agent for the applicant. There you go, Mr. Schultz. Can you hear us?
Good evening, everybody. Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
Perfect. Just before we get started, you don't wish to withdraw your application this evening?
Do not.
Thank you. Is there anything?
Mr. Chair, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Gary. Yeah.
Good, I can hear you guys. Thank you. Thanks for the indulgence.
So with that, I know Gary has already read the report, so we should be good with the report and the recommendation from staff. So, Mr. Schultz, is there anything you'd like to add in addition to that at this time?
Nothing at this time.
Okay, very good. Is there any members that have had any questions of the applicant this evening? Not seeing any. And I know we don't have any applicant or any public members that wish to speak to this. So with that, I'll look for a recommendation from someone. Angie, sorry, Donna.
Through you, Mr. Chair, regarding application B0421-PC, and in the matter of lands legally known as Concession 1, Part Lot 33 Plan 59M-426 in the municipality known as 6 Limestone Court, Municipality of Niagara. The consent application B0421-PC be granted subject to the conditions outlined in the recommendations in the planning staff report dated March 3rd, 2021. For the following reasons, do you want me to read the whole piece? I'm sorry, Dan.
Just the
highlighting,
reasons,
right?
Just the reasons, yeah.
Okay. That the consent applicant provides the Secretary Treasurer with the deeds and triplicate for conveyance of the subject parcel or a registrable legal description of the subject parcel, together with a paper copy and electronic copy of the deposited reference plan, if applicable, for use in the issuance of the certificate of consent. That a final certification fee of $212 payable to the City of Port Colborne be submitted to the Secretary Treasurer. Number 3, pursuant to Section 5012 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, it is hereby stipulated that Section 50-3 or 50-5 shall apply to any subsequent conveyance of or other transaction involving the identical subject parcel of land. And for the following reasons, the application conforms to the policies of the Regional Official Plan, City of Port Colborne Official Plan, and will also comply with provisions of zoning bylaw 6575-3018 as amended. This decision is rendered having regard to the provisions of subsection 5124 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990 CP 13.
Thank you. Can I get a seconder to that? Gary? Any questions or comments? All those in favor? And no objectors, so it'd be granted. Thank you. That's all there is, Mr. Schultz. There is a 20-day waiting period, but thereafter you're good to go.
Okay, thanks so much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Have a good evening.
Chris, the next application, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our next application is number B05-21-PC. In the matter of the Planning Act RSO 1990, Chapter P13, Section 53(1), and in the matter of the lands legally known as Concession 1, Lot 33, in the former municipality of Humberstone, now the City of Port Colborne, Regional Municipality of Niagara, municipally known as 730 Main Street West. And in the matter of an application by the agent Michelle McCarthy on behalf of the owners SBA Canada for a consent under Section 53(1) of the Planning Act RSO 1990, Chapter P13, to lease a parcel of land in excess of 21 years, being Part 1, having a lot frontage of 20 meters on Highway 3/Main Street West, and an area of 1,768.9 meters squared. This application is also seeking to establish right-of-way easements over Part 2, having a total lot area of 200.8 meters squared, and Part 3, having a total lot area of 148.7 meters squared. The purpose of the easements is to allow ingress and egress from the property, as well as future maintenance to the existing telecommunication tower. Planning staff has reviewed the reference application and offer the following comments. For public comments, notice was circulated on February 23rd, 2021 to both Port Colborne and Wainfleet property owners, and no written correspondence has been received. From agency comments, notice was circulated on February 23rd, 2021, and the following has been received. From the Ministry of Transportation, Ontario, the MTO is in support of the application provided that no construction/works are taking place on the property. The property owners should be made aware that the subject site is located within an MTO permit control area for Highway 3. As a result, an MTO building and land use permit is required prior to the commencement of any on-site construction/works. All development must comply with the MTO building and land use policy. All future development of the subject site will require bringing the current highway access to current MTO standards as per Section 4.6.9, first principle. From the regional staff recommend that the application be deferred to confirm the exact location and size of the existing sewage system servicing the existing commercial building. The system must be wholly contained within Part 4. In response to comments received from the Niagara region dated March 10th, 2021, planning staff offers a revised recommendation to the planning comments dated March 3rd, 2021. The consent application B05-21-PC be adjourned until the April 14th, 2021 Committee of Adjustment meeting, when confirmation is received that the septic system for the existing building is wholly contained on Part 4. And that concludes the correspondence for this application.
Thank you. Now, just before we bring in the applicant, I know there is a request to defer this. I know the applicant is here, and before we get into it, unless there's consensus to defer this, quite frankly, I would prefer to start the meeting. Maybe the applicant can provide some comments to the comments from the region, and worst case scenario, if we need to get more information, we can adjourn to the next meeting to make that final decision. So unless someone has a motion or recommendation to defer, I'd like to proceed if everyone's good with that. Not seeing any objections. So with that, yes, you can. I see the applicant is there. Yeah, you can unmute your mic if you would. And welcome to the meeting. I'm assuming you don't want to defer your application.
No, so thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening, everyone. I appreciate that sentiment, and would appreciate actually hearing the application this evening if there's a comfort level, which I'm seeing that there is. So a little bit of a background with respect to the application, in addition to what Chris had provided, which is a thorough overview, is basically just that the region's involvement was something that came later in the process. And so we actually didn't really realize that the application would be circulated to the region. And then as a result of that delay, we just received that comment from the region this morning. And so while I can understand the desire to have confirmation of the location, it is just unfortunate that the timing was such that it came today, as opposed to in the form of a question when the application was received, circulated and received by the region. And then I think that the more important piece that I would like to address with committee tonight is that the location of the septic doesn't actually have any material impact on the request itself, because we're not suggesting or requesting consent for severance. We are not creating any new lot lines. This is actually just for a long-term lease, a lease greater than 21 years. And so with that in mind, there's no change to the existing facility. There's no construction, no development proposed whatsoever. So if there is a concern with respect to the septic system, I don't really understand what that is. Everything is remaining as is on site.
Yep.
Are there any questions?
Yep. Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the presenter, from your perspective, is a month delay, is there a matter of urgency here on your part for your client?
I would say that the client is more inclined to accept a month's delay than have the application denied. That said, we have been working towards this since late last year and submitted the application at the end of January. So working towards this evening's meeting. So obviously they would prefer to have it dealt with and addressed this evening.
Gary?
Perhaps through you to our planner. With respect to this, I've folks on the committee that know me, we've had our times with the region in terms of late comment. In this particular case, I'd like to hear from the planner as to whether he concurs with the agent on the no changes, and his sense of whether it's fair that they did receive this time late. I mean, they're generally late, or the day before or the day of, which I've always felt is is not fair to the applicants or their agents. But in this case, the shoe may indeed be on the other foot. So I don't know if our planner could make a comment to that, Mr. Chair.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Member Bruno. Yes, it is unfortunate that we do receive these comments so late and so oftenly late. There's not a lot the city can do with that, unfortunately. We circulate the application well in advance, typically, and we can't control when the region comes back with their answers. But what I will say is that the reason that staff have requested the adjournment rather than the deferral is to allow the applicant to speak tonight, because I know the applicant has other opinions about the region's comments, and not to say that either one is right or wrong, but the city feels that they agree with the region's comments that the septic system should be sorted out before a decision is made in the interest of the applicant, because the risk would solely be on the applicant if in the circumstance that the septic system does encroach on the part 4 that the region has been referring to, then they would have to start this whole process over rather than pushing it off a month for a decision.
I'll go to Gary first, and I think the applicant had her hand up too, but we'll go to Gary first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to David. David, given that, could the condition not be made a condition subject to the region's approval in this matter on the septic? Because otherwise it delays it another month, whereas if we dealt with the matter this evening, that's an assumption that it's in the affirmative, then wouldn't fulfilling the condition happen between now and the next meeting, and the applicant could go ahead because it wouldn't need to come back to us?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Member Bruno, sorry if I meant to be alluding to that, where this could be included as a condition of a decision, and then the applicant would have a year to fulfill that condition prior to the issuance of the final certification. But the issue with that, or lack of a better term, the risk element there, is that should the septic system encroach, then that condition can't be cleared, and they would have to start this process over either by coming back to the committee to revise that condition or a new application altogether.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And David, maybe the applicant could respond to that.
Yes, thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, to staff, I do agree with the approach that you basically just outlined. And the reason I had my hand up is actually that I wanted to clarify that it would be if there was a condition applied to satisfy the region's comment. I would bring the perspective that because we're not establishing a lot line, there is no severance, there is no development, it shouldn't actually matter where the septic is. Regardless, we're establishing leasehold interest, and that's all. So I would agree that if it is included as a condition, that worst case scenario, let's say there is an encroachment into one of the easement areas, then we would be in a position where we couldn't satisfy the region's condition, and then we would have to come back. So I appreciate you kind of articulating that. And I think the only follow-up question I would have is, what would that process look like to revisit committee if we needed to request a revision to conditions down the road?
Before David responds, as far as if there is a condition, it is up to the committee. We could waive the condition or alter the condition henceforth without having to come back. The unfortunate part would be is if to satisfy the condition you had to move the property boundary, then that's a different scenario. Then basically you have to reapply. And I think that's where David was going about making sure. So if you needed to move the boundary a foot or two to clear it, then that would be part of the agreement. But I guess to your original point, and quite frankly, as soon as I seen this report from the region, my comment was the exact same as yours. There's no proposed new development. I don't know what this risk that is perceived here if the septic system did encroach on that area. like I say, they're not severing the property. So you put a fence around that area and say, okay, yeah, you're leasing this area, but you just can't go in this area because the septic bed's there for the property. I don't understand what the concern or the risk is here. The tower is there. There's a roadway there. Everything is there. I don't see what the risk concern is here. Maybe David, you can articulate what the concern is there.
To you, Mr. Chair. To be fair, I don't know the ins and outs of the region's septic policies or their policies in their official plan for relating to septic systems. So I'm not sure if the leased land refers to all leased lands or if it's just for new lot creation. I'm not too sure. So that's why we kind of concurred with the region, is because we're not one to say otherwise, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
But I would agree that, in my opinion, it does appear that the septic system won't impact this leased land. So I do agree with that notion that you're mentioning.
Well, I guess from my perspective, and I won't speak for the other members here, just because the region makes that recommendation doesn't mean we have to follow that recommendation. It's not like we've never gone against what the recommendation was, either staff or the region. And as long as we're within our authority to do so, and we don't wish to make it a condition, I guess the alternative for the region is to appeal our decision. Like I say, it's for an easement. It's not for a severance. Quite frankly, I don't know. We've already, and in fact, when we talk about comments being late from the region, we've already pushed this meeting an extra day. So if we had left it on the Tuesday like we had normally planned it originally, they would have missed the date, or they would have sent it yesterday, I guess. I don't know. But Gary, you had your hand up if you wanted to add something more.
Well, I'm just wondering, not to get in a catch-22 here, is we may feel that way. In this case, and I don't know, to the agent, I don't know that you got an answer from David with respect to understanding what that process might be. But at the end of the day, if the applicant's willing to understand the acceptance of the risk of us passing this conditional upon, then I believe I'd be prepared to go ahead. But I'm thinking that I'd like to hear from her as to if that's her call, because if she agrees with Mr. Chair, your synopsis and David's opinion, then, does she want to take that risk upon her client and have to maybe start over? Or, I don't know that we need to, I'd like to make the applicant part of the process. It's, after all, it is their application, or they are starting over. So that's a calculated risk for themselves. I'm with you that I don't see what could possibly be an issue, but one would have thought the regional planner would have also saw that. But sometimes from afar, you don't see that, or they're under the gun for time. So I don't know if the applicant wanted to weigh in on that, or the agent.
Sure, thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, I think one point of clarification, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Chair, the preference from my perspective as a professional, and I know this would be the perspective of our client as well, would be to seek the approval with the conditions as written in the staff report, without the condition from the region. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Chair, I thought that was what I had understood you were suggesting. And that would be what I would recommend, whatever the right term is, and hope that the committee understands that perspective, given the fact that we are talking about a long-term lease and not establishing a new lot.
Yeah, that's exactly my position. And in addition, I would assume when this tower was built, it required a building permit of some sort?
Yes, I mean, I'm quite sure that it did, and maybe that's a question of staff that predates my involvement in the file.
David, would you have an answer on that?
Through you, or to you, Mr. Chair. Telecommunication towers are under the jurisdiction of Industry Canada, so they do not require a building permit. However, council does need to sign off that they have no objection to the location of the tower.
So you're telling me they can build a tower on top of a septic system and no one would be concerned about that?
Industry Canada is the jurisdiction of that. I'm pretty sure they would review that. I can't speak for them, but I would hope they reviewed that.
That's very interesting. Okay. Did anyone else have any comments? So I guess, you know my position. I guess secondary to that, if, you know, the preference would be to add a condition that this be cleared with the region. Certainly that's something that we can present, and if they do this review and the septic's not an issue, they've met the condition and they're off to the races, don't have to come back. Worst case scenario, I don't know, there's something like some legal reason why they can't do this and the septic encroaches. I guess two options. They either figure some remedy, they either adjust the septic system to suit so it's not encroaching, or worst case scenario, they have to bump the property line or this boundary line for this easement over, in which case they would need to come back and start the process over again. So to the applicant, I see you have your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just wanted to clarify one point. My preference would be obviously to, as I mentioned, proceed with the original recommendation of staff and the conditions in that report. Failing that, I think our preference would be deferral as opposed to the adding of the condition to satisfy the region. And I just wanted to make sure that that was clear.
Okay.
Thank you.
Eric, did I see your hand up?
No, I think no, but I do have some comment, I guess. So based on what I'm hearing from the agent herself, she's saying that she would prefer that we go with the original as stated in the report, and if not, then we would, if that is not what the committee would want, then she would prefer a deferral before a condition being put in. Am I correct?
Yes, that's correct. Through you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So with that, I'll leave it to the committee. You know where I stand. I personally think, I'm certainly, again, no expert in this, but like I say, without the region giving additional explanation as to why this is such a major concern, I'm at a loss why they would do. I could see if this was the severance, 100% would agree with them full bore. But in this particular case, I just don't see it. But certainly I'm open for someone's recommendation. And I see Eric, you got your hand up.
Through you, Mr. Chair. This is to David. In the report, I'm reading the reason for the recommendation for it being granted. And if you go to, for the following reasons, it says conforms to the policies of the regional official plan. Can we still include that term, knowing what we do?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Member Beauregard. I believe that the septic policies are separate from the official plan policies, if I'm not mistaken. I think the septic systems are under the Ontario Building Code. So in theory, I would believe that the application still conforms to the regional official plan.
Okay, thank you.
So with Gary?
Just to clarify, and this may have been answered and I missed it. So we asked the applicant or the agent for the applicant about a building permit in the first place, but is the applicant aware, or are there any plans of this septic system that your client has? In other words, is there anything in the file from the original build and any documents that you have in the current arrangement on the lease that that show any septic system? So there's no septic system that you're aware of in your footprint?
Through the chair, and thank you for that question. We were not involved in this file when the tower was established, so we don't have those records. And I have obviously conveyed the message from the region to our client today and requested if they had anything handy that would identify the location of that septic system that they provided. And unfortunately, they didn't have something that they were able to get their hands on today. I'm sure that it does exist somewhere. But again, I think I would go back to the comment that it isn't material.
Right. And you haven't contacted the lessor?
Sorry?
So the lessor has not been contacted? You're leasing it, right?
Yes.
Yes. The people, so the original property owner who leases you that?
We didn't get in touch with them today, no.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So, Eric?
I will bring a motion forward. So, in application B05-21-PC, and in the matter of concession 1, part lot 33 on plan 59M-426, municipally known as, wait, am I reading the right one?
B05.
Okay, municipally known as 6 Limestone Court. That's not correct, right?
No,
It
that's
is,
not.
right. But that is how it's written, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, let me go to the report and pull up the correct address. 730 Main Street West. Main Street West.
Yeah, you're good.
Right.
That consent right application B05-21-PC be granted for the reasons outlined in the planning report. For the following reasons. Sorry, I'm going between.
Yeah, no, you're good.
For the following reasons. 1, the application conforms to the policies of the regional official plan, City of Port Colborne official plan, and will also comply with the provisions of zoning bylaw 6575/30/18 as amended. 2, the decision is rendered having regard to the provisions of subsection 51 subsection 24 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, Chapter P13. Do I need to include any more, Dave?
No, I believe you've covered everything.
Okay. Thank you. Can I get a seconder to that? Angie? Any questions or comments? And just before we move that, I'm pretty sure the applicant's okay with us pushing forward this way, as you've expressed earlier.
Yes, just to clarify, does the motion refer back to the conditions that are in the original staff report, or no conditions?
Eric, to your thing, I don't believe you added that extra condition, correct?
No, this all has to do with the original staff report. This is the
Appreciate
recommendation
the
under the staff
clarification.
report.
Yeah, so the only conditions would be the original 3 that were in the staff report.
Much appreciated. Thank you for the clarification.
All right, any other questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That'll be carried. Thank you. So there is a 20-day waiting period, and hopefully you can also just double check that septic system just in case there's an issue. But otherwise, you're good to go.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
And Mr. Secretary, the next application, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our next application is number B06-21-PC. And in the matter of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, Chapter P13, Section 53(1), and in the matter of the lands legally known as Concession 1, Lot 23, in the former municipality of Humberstone, now the City of Port Colborne, Regional Municipality of Niagara, municipally known as 837 Ruder Road. And in the matter of an application by the agent Brenda Kess on behalf of the owners Vale Canada Limited for a severance under Section 53(1) of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, Chapter P13, so as to permit the conveyance of Part 1 having a lot frontage of 149.84 meters with a total lot area of 2.81 hectares on Ruder Road for an existing industrial use. Part 2 will retain a lot frontage of 718.54 meters on Ruder Road with a total lot area of 36.99 hectares for a continued conservation use. Planning staff has reviewed the reference application and offer the following comments. From public comments, notice was circulated on February 23rd, 2021, and no written correspondence has been received. From agency comments, notice was also circulated on February 23rd, 2021, and the following has been received. From the drainage superintendent, drainage has no objection to this application. From the NPCA, the NPCA does not have any objections to this application. And from the region, regional staff would not object to the consent application provided, 1, that the lot lines for Part 1 be revised on the consent sketch to reflect the revised lot line configuration prepared by GSP Group, dated February 24th, 2021, to the satisfaction of the Niagara region. 2, that permanent fencing be installed along the revised lot line to prevent further encroachment into the PSW and significant woodland to the satisfaction of the Niagara region. The conditions are required in order for the proposal to be consistent with the PPS and to conform to provincial policy or to provincial plans and the ROP. The proposal as submitted fragments the PSW on the east side of the lot line, which is not consistent with the PPS and does not conform to the ROP. Planning staff recommend that consent application B06-21-PC be granted subject to the following conditions. 1, that the lot lines for Part 1 be revised on the consent sketch to reflect the revised lot line configurations prepared by GSP Group, dated February 24th, 2021, to the satisfaction of the Niagara region. 2, that permanent fencing be installed along the revised lot line to prevent further encroachment into the PSW and significant woodland to the satisfaction of the Niagara region. 3, that the applicant provides the Secretary-Treasurer with the deeds in triplicate for conveyance of the subject parcel or a registrable legal description of the subject parcel, together with a paper copy and electronic copy of the deposited reference plan, if applicable, for use in the issuance of the certificate of consent. 4, that a final certification fee of $212 payable to the City of Port Colborne be submitted to the Secretary-Treasurer. 5, pursuant to Section 5012 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, it is hereby stipulated that Section 53 or 55 shall apply to any subsequent conveyance of or other transaction involving the identical subject parcel of land. For the following reasons: 1, the application conforms to the policies of the Regional Official Plan, City of Port Colborne Official Plan, and will also comply to the provisions of Zoning Bylaw 6575/30/18 as amended. And that concludes the correspondence for this application.
Thank you. And you bring the applicant in, please.
Hi, through you, Mr. Chair, Joseph, I'm with GSP Group here on behalf of our client that submitted this application for consent. And
if I might interject just before you start, you don't wish to withdraw your application this evening, correct?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
We've reviewed the updated comments and conditions from staff and have no objections.
All right, thank you. Is there any questions of the applicant this evening from any members? Not seeing any. And there is no public request to present tonight, so there's no public feedback and no other additional correspondence. I will note that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, you read in the amended memorandum that you sent us earlier today, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, thank you. So with that, does anyone have a recommendation? Donna. Gary was a little slow on the uptake. We'll get him next time.
Okay. For looking at application B06-21-PC, known as Concession 1, Lot 23, municipally known as 837 Reuter Road. The consent application B06-21-PC be granted, subject to the conditions outlined in the staff memo to the committee dated March the 10th, 2021. For the following reasons: the application conforms to the policies of the Regional Official Plan, City of Port Colborne Official Plan, and will also comply with the provisions of the zoning bylaw 6575-30-18 as amended.
And if I'll go to a seconder first. Gary? Just before we go on, I think there was supposed to be another reason there that the decision is rendered having regard to the provisions of subsection 5124 of the Planning Act RSO 1990 CP 13. Is that correct, Dave?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. That's correct.
Okay, that was in the staff report, but it wasn't in that. So since we moved it and seconded it, I'll add it as a friendly amendment if everyone's, the mover and the seconder is okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor? That'd be carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Have a good night.
Too.
Mr. Secretary, the next application, please, at your leisure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The next application is application number A05-21-PC. In the matter of the Planning Act RSO 1990 CP 13 as amended and section 6.5C, 6.5F of the City of Port Colborne zoning bylaw 6575/30/18 as amended. And in the matter of the vacant property legally known as Lot 1 on Plan 784 in the City of Port Colborne, Regional Municipality of Niagara, being Part 2 on Plan 59R 16711, and located in the second density residential zone on the north side of Amelia Street. And in the matter of an application by the owners Dana and Jason Stanley for relief from the provisions of zoning bylaw 6575/30/18 as amended under section 45 of the Planning Act RSO 1990 CP 13, so as to permit the construction of a semi-detached dwelling on the north side of Amelia Street, notwithstanding the following. One, that a minimum front yard setback of 4.6 meters be provided, whereas a minimum front yard setback of 6.5 meters is required for semi-detached buildings. And two, that a minimum rear yard setback of 3.5 meters be provided, whereas a minimum rear yard setback of 6 meters is required for semi-detached dwellings. Planning staff has reviewed the reference application and offer the following comments. Notice was circulated to the public on February 25th, 2021, and no correspondence has been received. For agency comments, notice was also circulated on February 25th, 2021, and the following has been received. From our engineering department, the construction and entrance to municipal roads bylaw sets a requirement that the driveway needs to be 8 meters from the street line of the intersection. The west driveway shown on the plan is within the intersection as per bylaw 1117/64/81. Planning staff recommend that minor variance application A05-21-PC be granted subject to the following conditions. One, that a minimum of 1 parking space be provided inside each of the attached garages for a total of 2 spaces, or the driveways be reconfigured to the satisfaction of the planning division so as to provide parking spaces with dimensions in accordance with the city's zoning bylaw. 2, that entrance bylaw 1117/64/81 be amended or relief be granted to the applicant by City Council to permit a driveway on the property that will satisfy parking requirements as outlined in the city's zoning bylaw. For the following reasons: 1, it is minor in nature as the reduction in front and rear yard setbacks is a reasonable and measured request. 2, it is appropriate for development of the site since the proposed dwelling will be located in a suitable location on the site. 3, is desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw as semi-detached dwellings are permitted in the R2 zone. 4, it is desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the official plan as residential uses are permitted in areas within the urban residential designation. And that concludes the correspondence for this application.
Thank you. If you can bring in the applicants.
Hi, everyone.
Good evening. And just before you get started, you don't wish to withdraw or request deferral of your application this evening?
I do not.
All right, thank you. Is there anything further you'd like to add at this time?
I don't think so. I just, maybe a little thing. I don't think it's going to change anybody's mind, but I just realized that this is part of the old Humberstone CIP program. So I haven't done a whole lot of research in finding out what that entails, but I just thought I would let council know as well.
Thank you. Does any members have any questions for the applicant this evening?
Yep, pretty straightforward.
Not seeing any. I don't know if you, to the applicant, I don't know if you noticed that there was that extra little thing in there about the driveway, and there's a bylaw about driveways and stuff.
I got that notification today, and I didn't have time to familiarize myself with the parking bylaws. So
I can give you the Cliff Notes version.
okay.
Basically, there's another bylaw that states that driveways have to be so far from intersections. And if you look at the aerial view of where you propose to put the driveway, there's another street like right directly across. So technically, one of those driveways is directly in line with that street. Now, and if I'm going outside my boundaries here, David, let me know. But basically, they're looking at eventually amending this bylaw. But right now, this property, because of where the driveway is located, would be in violation of that bylaw.
Okay.
So that's why the two extra condition, or the extra condition was added about getting relief from that. To get relief from that, we can't grant that. You'd have to go to council and make a request to council. To my knowledge, there's no fee to do that, but you do have to request it from council to give you leave of that requirement in that bylaw. Or you have to do something to comply with the bylaw, which in your case, I don't think you would be able to do that because you'd have two driveways, one on top of the other. So because of the configuration of what you plan to develop here. So you would probably have to get relief from that zoning bylaw. The other condition here is that because of the reduced front yard setback, there's no room to park a car completely in a driveway. So that's why that condition of the garage is required. I don't know the specific proposed layout of the building or the dwellings that you plan to build. I will say that you might want to double check the size of that garage. If it's anything like the garage I have, and if you have a pickup truck, you won't be parking it in that garage.
It is not suitable for a pickup truck, no. It is suitable for a car, but not a truck.
Yeah, so you might want to just make that, because that is a condition, because you got to have room for a single vehicle. I would imagine a car qualifies as a single vehicle. But just if that can be taken into consideration, I would certainly make sure that it is a requirement that there is that parking space of a minimum one parking space. And I'm sure there's minimum distances that needs to comply with to get to that. But
okay.
I don't know if that would entertain or come into your plans or not. But anyway, it's there. So with that, if no one else has any other questions, Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, your explanation of that was quite thorough, but to help the applicant, through you to David. David, as recently as the last meeting or two, we've had this driveway issue that council would have to look at to waive for the benefit of the applicant. Is that just a letter into planning? I'm assuming it has to be done within the year. And is that something you see as just getting it to council in a reasonable amount of time to fulfill that condition in the staff report? For my own and probably all of our edification, sounds like this bylaw that we haven't heard much about for years is rearing its head quite frequently now. And until we change it, it would be helpful to know if that process is onerous and how long would it take from the time of a request, and would the applicant, well, I suppose it's up to the applicant, would there be a need to appear for that at council?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Member Bruno, that would have to be clarified with the clerk, but it would be something that's going through the engineering or now the Public Works Department because it is their bylaw that they enforce. Why it has never been enforced in the past, and then all of a sudden in the recent few weeks it's been an issue, I don't know. Ideally, the bylaw would be either repealed or changed altogether by council as a directive to engineering staff. Because I know a lot of other municipalities, they've been asking around, and other municipalities don't have this type of bylaw at all. So I'm not sure the purpose behind it or what they were thinking in 1981, but yeah, so that would have to be a process that goes through the clerks as a delegation to the engineering or Public Works Department.
Thank you. Perhaps at the end of our meeting, after we're done, the applicants, we could chat about how best to get that to council and have it done, because right now you're at the meeting, we're at the meeting, and the keeper of the bylaw isn't. And we'll just keep doing this unless one or all of us as a collective pushes for that to be done. But we could discuss that later, perhaps, Mr. Chair.
Sure. Any other questions or comments? The one thing I will put as a point of clarification, since this is a variance, there is no time frame. Basically, you'd have to get that waiver from council before you could probably get your building permit.
Okay.
So if you weren't in a hurry to get a building permit, you can leave it. I would suggest you don't leave it and deal with it as soon as possible, just to make sure that it's clear and you know, but there is no time frame, but you would have to have it done prior to getting a building permit. Otherwise you won't get a building permit. To the applicant.
I don't have plans finalized. I did a very basic site plan for this purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I have no problem reconfiguring the plans to put the driveway in the middle, so it's not in the middle of an intersection. There's an existing semi-driveway there now, and I could put two there. I'm not opposed to doing that either. So would that eliminate the need for the parking, other than the one space or two spaces, I mean?
Yeah, if it complies with the bylaw where the location is, it would, and then you wouldn't have to go to council or to staff to get that waived. I have a feeling, I believe it's 8 meters, so quite frankly, I don't know if you'd have room to do that, but I don't have the actual dimensions, but yeah, as far as you wouldn't have to come back to us to that. So it's either. You either get the waiver or you reconfigure it so your driveway's not in violation of the bylaw. It's either way.
Okay.
And then as far as the actual layout of what you put there is not here before us. As long as you don't encroach any farther than the granted variances, then you can pretty much do whatever you like there. All right. So with that, if there's no other questions, does anyone have a recommendation? Gary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With respect to application A05-21-PC, in matter of the lot 1 on plan 784 on the north side of Amelia Street, the minor variance application A05-21-PC be granted subject to the conditions outlined in the staff memo to committee dated March 10th, 2021 for the following reasons. Do I need to read those out?
Just the reasons, correct, yes.
Sure, thank you. Minor in nature's reduction in the front and rear yard setbacks is a reasonable and measured request. 2, appropriate for the development of the site since the proposed dwelling will be located in a suitable location on the site. 3, desirable in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaws, semi-detached dwellings are permitted in the R2 zone. And 4, desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the official plan, as residential uses are permitted in the areas with the urban residential designation.
Thank you. And a seconder to that? Eric, any questions or comments? All those in favor? And that would be unanimous. Thank you. There is still a 20-day waiting period, but thereafter you can start proceeding with trying to get this waiver from council if that's the desire you wish to go, or reconfiguring whatever, but you'll have to wait 20 days before you can get an application for a building permit.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
You too.
You.
And Mr. Secretary, whenever you're ready with the next application.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our next application is application number A06-21-PC in the matter of the Planning Act RSO 1990 CP13 as amended and sections 2.20, 15.3G, 15.6A, 15.6E of the City of Port Colborne zoning bylaw 6575/30/18 as amended, and in the matter of the vacant property legally known as Concession 1, part of Lot 3 in the former municipality of Humberstone, now in the City of Port Colborne, regional municipality of Niagara, and located in the rural zone on the west side of Pleasant Beach Road. And in the matter of an application by the agent Jason Pizzig-Carolla on behalf of the owner Jesse and Mia Jukowski for relief from the provisions of zoning bylaw 6575/30/18 as amended under section 45 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990 CP13, so as to permit the construction of a detached dwelling and garage on the west side of Pleasant Beach Road, notwithstanding the following. 1, that a minimum distance separation of 40 meters to the proposed dwelling be provided, whereas 81 meters is required. 2, that a maximum lot coverage of 14.7% be provided, whereas a maximum lot coverage of 10% is required for detached dwellings. 3, that a maximum lot coverage of 2% be provided, whereas a maximum lot coverage of 1% be required for accessory structures. And 4, that a maximum height of 6.8 meters be provided, whereas a maximum height of 6 meters is provided for accessory structures. Planning staff has reviewed the reference application and offered the following comments. Notice was circulated to the public on February 25th, 2021, and no written correspondence has been received. For agency comments, notice was also circulated on February 25th, 2021, and no written correspondence has been received as well. I don't have that in front of me.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm just there was confirmation from the region that they have no concern with the septic system either on the property.
Okay. So planning staff recommend that minor variance application A06-21-PC be granted subject to the conditions outlined in the planning staff report dated March 3rd, 2021 for the following reasons. Let me just look through that. One, that it is minor in nature, as the reduction in MDS setbacks, increase in lot coverage, and increase in accessory building height is a reasonable and measured request. 2, it is appropriate for development of the site since the proposed dwelling and accessory building will be located in a suitable location on the site. 3, it is desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw as single detached dwellings are permitted in the rural zone. 4, is desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the official plan as residential uses are permitted in areas with the rural designation. And that concludes the correspondence for this application.
Thank you. If you can bring in the applicants.
Ooh, can you hear me?
We can hear you. Do you have a camera as well?
But here we go. Okay.
There we go. Just before you get started, you don't wish to withdraw or defer your application this evening?
No, I do not.
Okay, so with that, is there anything further you'd like to add at this time?
Not a whole lot to add here. Pretty straightforward. Really, it's an undersized lot in a rural area. So it's a bit of a puzzle. We have to fit in a house, a small garage, and a septic system. So pretty much there's no flexibility where we can move those parts. So that's why we need the variances. I think they're all within reason. And I believe, yeah, that's it. Just excited to hear what you have to say about it.
Very good, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for the applicant this evening? Not seeing any. Now, I do have a question for the planner, and Eric, I'll go to you in a second. The minimum distance separation calculation and issue. If I remember correctly, we had this lot come to us not too long ago for severance to make the lot. Would that not have been addressed at that time?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I don't believe this one has come through severance, at least to my knowledge. I did look into that as well because I thought it did, but in my review of all of our files, we didn't have any lot creation applications for this property. Because it's an existing lot, that's where the MDS setbacks kick in for a new building permit, rather than if it was through a consent, they would have been addressed back then.
Right, okay. I could have swore that we just did this not too long ago. After a while, when you look at all these wooded lots, they all start looking the same after a while. Anyway, okay. So with that, I don't have any issue with that. I was just, like I said, I just thought we had done this lot not that long ago. But so with that, Eric, you had your hand up.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. I also was a little bit concerned about the MDS calculation. My concern is that of the current livestock facility. In our report, it says that as it currently stands, it's of a small scale, but I think the committee has to take into consideration what the potential of it in the future will be. So can this, and this, I guess the question goes to Dave, can the livestock facility be expanded in the future? Like, do they have the ability to become bigger, or would there be like what measures are possible to make sure that the MDS, that the impact of the livestock facility will not have an impact on this current property?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Member Beauregard, the calculation that staff conducts is based on the type of the livestock facility and the size of the building that they are housed in. So the entire size of the existing building is taken into account for the maximum number of livestock that could potentially be there at one point. Currently there are only 3, either miniature horses or donkey. But I think based on the size that we calculated, only a maximum of 7 would be able to fit in that small scale building that they have. Any future upgrades or expansions to that are subject to a different MDS calculation called MDS 2. So they would have to comply with setbacks from existing dwellings in the area then, if that makes sense.
Eric?
Yeah, through the chair to Dave. Okay, so just to make sure I heard you correctly, any future, if this livestock facility, if the owner of that property wanted to increase it, it would have to abide by different regulations in order to do so, which they likely would not be able to meet because of this proposed dwelling. Correct?
That's through you, Mr. Chair. That's correct. From staff did visit the property and met with the property owner, and from our opinion, it looks more like not even a hobby farm, more like the miniature horses and donkey are there as like a pet, more so than a livestock facility, which is why staff is recommending the application.
Okay, thank you. I have no more questions.
Thank you. Anyone else? I will say, Eric, just to your point, even if that became an issue, I don't think this dwelling would be as much of an impact or have the similar impact as the neighboring property that's already existing. So I don't think this would change their requirements one way or the other, other than maybe by a couple meters. But so with that being said, if no one else got any other questions, I don't think we had any public feedback regarding this property. So I'll look for a recommendation. Angie?
Okay, I would, in the matter of the application A0621-PC, in the matter of the vacant property legally known as Concession 1, part of Lot 3 in the former municipality of Humberston, now in the city of Port Colborne, regional municipality of Niagara, and located in the rural zone on the west side of Pleasant Beach Road. That the minor variance application A0621PC be granted, subject to the conditions outlined in the recommendation in the planning staff report dated March 3rd, 2021, for the following reasons. 1, minor in nature, as the reduction of the NBS setback, increase in lot coverage, and increase in accessory building height is a reasonable and measured request. 2, appropriate for the development of the site, since the proposed dwelling and accessory building will be located in a suitable location on the site. 3, desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw, as single detached dwellings are permitted in the rural zone. And 4, desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the official plan, as residential uses are permitted in areas in the rural with the rural designation.
Thank you. Can I get a seconder to that? Eric? Questions or comments? All those in favor? Be carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Meeting.
You too.
Thank you.
And Mr. Secretary, the next application at your leisure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our next application is application number A08-21-PC. In the matter of the Planning Act RSO 1990 CP13 as amended, and Section 3.5B2 and 8.4B of the City of Port Colborne zoning bylaw 6575/30/18 as amended. And in the matter of the property legally known as part of Lot 8 on Plan 849 in the City of Port Colborne, Regional Municipality of Niagara, and located in the 4th Density Residential Zone, municipally known as 133 Durham Street. And in the matter of an application by the agent Dulkif Hassam on behalf of the owner 2812881 Ontario Inc. for relief from the provisions of zoning bylaw 6575/30/18 as amended under Section 45 of the Planning Act RSO 1990 CP13 so as to permit the construction of a proposed fourplex dwelling on 133 Durham Street, notwithstanding the following. 1, that a maximum parking area width of 10.4 meters, whereas a maximum parking width of 6.1 meters is required on a residential lot with 4 or fewer dwelling units. And 2, that a minimum lot area per unit of 93 meters squared be provided, whereas a minimum lot area per unit of 125 meters squared is required for fourplexes. Planning staff has reviewed the referenced application and offer the following comments. Notice was circulated to the public on February 25th, 2021, and no written correspondence has been received at this time. As for agency comments, notice was circulated on February 25th, 2021, and the following has been received. From our engineering department, the maximum width of an entrance shall be 7.3 meters. At 9.2 meters, this entrance does not meet or conform to bylaw 1117/64/81, a policy and procedure for constructing entrances to municipal roads. Planning staff recommend that minor variance application A08-21-PC be granted subject to the following conditions. 1, that entrance bylaw 1117/64/81 be amended or relief be granted to the applicant by City Council to permit a driveway on the property that will satisfy parking requirements as outlined in the city's zoning bylaw. For the following reasons. One, it is minor in nature as the increase in parking area width and reduction in lot area per unit is a reasonable and measured request. Two, it is appropriate for development of the site since the proposed dwelling will be located in a suitable location on the site. Three, it is desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw as fourplex dwellings are permitted in the R4 zone of the city zoning bylaw. And four, it is desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the official plan as residential uses are permitted in the East Waterfront Secondary Plan mixed use area of the city's official plan. And that concludes the correspondence for this application.
Thank you. Let me bring in the applicant.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Just before you get started, you don't wish to withdraw or defer your application this evening?
No, I don't.
Very good. Is there anything further you'd like to add at this time?
Nothing further.
Thank you. Do any members have any questions of the applicant this evening? Angie?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the applicant. I just have a few questions because I'm very, very familiar with this property and with the building that was on there before the many years ago on that property. So I know just about how much room there is to build, and I really can't even begin to envision 4 units on this and parking. It's very, very difficult to envision because I do know that you're talking about just maybe 22 feet across to be able to build on frontage. I don't. There's not really a lot of room, and I really can't imagine that the building that was there was quite small and it had to encroach on the neighbor's property. So I just thought this is an odd thing to be able to have a front yard, a backyard, a front parking area, and 4 units. Are these? I just want to know: are they going to be efficiency units or studio units? Is that what these are?
I believe the owner will be getting them 1-bedroom units. As of the floor plan layouts, I really don't know much of the designs, but I do know the square footage of the building will add up to be around, give or take, 1,600 square feet.
Oh.
Yeah, so I'm not sure how it's going to be divided, but that's how the building area is according to the proposal.
Okay. It would make sense to have about 400 square feet per unit, which would make it probably an efficiency. But okay, that's interesting to know. I'm always looking at ways to improve that area, and that's a very interesting thing to know. So you're looking at 4 parking spots across the front of the building. That would be across the frontage.
Yes, that is it.
And that would be curb cuts and all of that because you're going to have to come right in off the street and park right there, correct?
Yes, straight forward into the parking lot. I believe that's why we also need a relief on the engineering requirements for the driveway.
Okay, it does bring a lot of concerns because you do have the trail right across the road from that.
Yes.
We have the Friendship Trail right there. That's a heavily trafficked area. It's actually a feeder road in for several other things, a couple of different industrial activities, plus the whole East Village neighborhood. So I am very concerned with this parking idea and it being so close to the road without a lot of options to be able to turn cars around or actually see what's coming. You're a little bit of a backup and you're actually on the sidewalk. You're not going to have enough room to do any more than park a reasonable sized car, probably a compact car, between the sidewalk and the front of the building. So that's going to be a very interesting thing.
The actual so the lot frontage that we're proposing, the lot's front setback for the building is going to be around 9.2 meters. There will be a 1 meter walkway between the actual building and the parking area. And then the parking area, because the depth of the parking is only required to be 5.2 meters, there will be at least 10 feet of room between the sidewalk and the road that somebody could actually pull out without and probably see the road. I do own a truck myself, and I did drive into the lot and come out just to see how I can park, and it works fine with the proposal that we have.
Okay, so how long will the building be?
So the building length is actually, the depth of the building is 50 feet.
50 feet?
Yes.
Okay. And the rear yard is how long?
The rear yard setback is 6 meters.
Okay, so we've got 6 meters, 9.2 meters, and 50 feet.
Yeah. So 15.2 meters, 9.2, and 6 meters. Yep.
Okay, thank you. That's my questions.
Angie, just to your point about the size of the units, keeping in mind this is going to be a 2-story structure.
I do understand that.
So each unit, theoretically, if you split it, could be 800 square feet. It's got to leave some room
He said 1,600 feet in total.
That's the footprint.
Yeah. Yes, that's the footprint.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, that's better.
All right. Does anyone else have any questions? Not seeing any, and I know there is no public input on this particular application. So with that, I'll look for a recommendation from somebody. Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Respect to application A0821PC in the matter of part of Lot 8 on Plan 849, municipally known as 133 Durham Street. The minor variance application A08-21-PC be granted, subject to the conditions outlined in the staff memo to the committee on March 10th, 2021, for the following reasons. One, minor in nature is the increase in parking area width and reduction in lot area per unit is a reasonable and measured request. Two, appropriate for the development of the site since the proposed dwelling will be located in a suitable location on site. Three, desirable in compliance with the general intent purpose of the zoning bylaw, as fourplex dwellings are permitted in the R4 zone of the city's zoning bylaw. And four, desirable in compliance with the general intent purpose of the official plan, as residential uses are permitted in the east waterfront secondary plan mixed use area of the city's official plan.
Thank you. Seconder to that? Angie, questions or comments? All those in favor? That'll be carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too.
You too.
And last but not least, the last application there, Mr. Secretary, when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our last application tonight is application number A09-21-PC in the matter of the Planning Act RSO 1990 CP13 as amended and section 6.5E, 6.5F, and 6.5G of the City of Port Colborne zoning bylaw 6575/30/18 as amended. And in the matter of the property legally known as part of Lot 17 on Plan 849 in the City of Port Colborne, Regional Municipality of Niagara, and located in the second density residential zone, municipally known as 142 Fraser Street. In the matter of an application by the agent Jerry Roy on behalf of the owner Davert Tools Inc. for relief from the provisions of zoning bylaw 6575/30/18 as amended under section 45 of the Planning Act RSO 1990 CP13 so as to permit the construction of a proposed semi-detached dwelling on 142 Fraser Street, notwithstanding the following. One, that a minimum corner side yard setback of 1.22 meters be provided, whereas a minimum corner side yard setback of 3 meters is required for semi-detached dwellings. Two, that a minimum rear yard setback of 3.6 meters be provided, where a minimum rear yard setback of 6 meters is required for semi-detached dwellings. And three, that a maximum lot coverage of 50.5% be provided, whereas a maximum lot coverage of 50% is permitted for semi-detached dwellings. Planning staff has reviewed the referenced application and offer the following comments. Notice was circulated to the public on February 25th, 2021, and the following has been received from a Jennifer Strong, who's the owner/occupant of 140 Fraser Street. Ms. Strong's comments have been distributed to the staff, the committee, and the applicant. And to summarize, she objects to the application for the following reasons. One, for safety purposes. Two, for quality of life of the occupants of both units. 3, it is inadequate parking provided for the occupants on site. 4 is drainage concerns. 5 is the undermining of foundation due to close proximity of proposed building on site. 6, elimination of sunlight from the east due to the height and close proximity of the building. 7, population density for the proposed structure being out of sync with the existing neighborhood. For agency comments, notice was circulated on February 25th, 2021, and the following has been received. From our engineering department, the bylaw 1117/64/81 identifies that no entrance within 8 meters for residential use of the street line of an intersection. The east entrance does not meet the bylaw requirement. And planning staff recommend that minor variance application A09-21-PC be granted subject to the following conditions. 1, that entrance bylaw 1117/64/81 be amended or relief be granted to the applicant by City Council to permit a driveway on the property that will satisfy parking requirements as outlined in the City Council zoning bylaw. For the following reasons: 1, it is minor in nature, as the reduction in corner side and rear setbacks, as well as an increase in lot coverage, is a reasonable and measured request. 2, it is appropriate for development of the site, since the proposed dwelling will be located in a suitable location on the site and will provide an additional dwelling unit. 3, it is desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw, as semi-detached dwellings are permitted in the R2 zone. 4, it is desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the official plan, as residential uses are permitted in areas with the urban residential designation. And that concludes the correspondence for this application.
Thank you. We can bring in the applicant.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Roy.
Do you have a video camera as well?
Just trying to hook it up. There we
There
go.
we go. Just before you get started, you don't wish to withdraw or defer your application this evening?
No.
Very good. Is there anything else you'd like to add at this time?
No, thanks.
Thank you. Any questions of the applicant this evening? That's Angie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Roy. I do have a few questions with respect to sightlines, traffic flow, that sort of thing. Where the driveways are going to be constructed and how people will get in and out of those driveways is really of great concern to me. That's probably the busiest intersection on the southeast side, and it is a very heavy traffic area. It's the feeder road for the whole community down through Colborne Street, Elizabeth, all down in there. It also feeds two very, very busy businesses there with Shirk Lumber and Port Colborne Lumber. Incredibly busy area also with the Friendship Trail there, but has the added aspect of the trail crossing, or the rail crossing rather, that's quite elevated. It's very, very difficult to see sightlines really become an issue. And if there's snow, it is an incredible issue. It's really a problem. I know because I travel this daily and I know the problems around this. I just wanted to understand what you've done or how you've decided to put the driveways where they are. Have you actually been to the site and thought of, pulled a car in and out, seeing what could happen there, what the sightlines were like?
Yes, I have. There's currently already a driveway there that was used on the previous building.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought the driveways were coming out onto Fraser.
Yes, there is. The curb's already. Yep.
Oh, it must be an old cut then, because for at least 30 years, there's been no driveway there.
Yeah, there must have been one there on the previous structure.
It was a donut shop, and the entrances were off of Mitchell Street. No, this was at least 30 years. There's been no way in or out Fraser Street. So I didn't know there was a cut in the sidewalk. So that's news to me. So thank you. But no, I just wanted to be sure because it's just such a dangerous area, and there have been a lot of fender benders. But that's also the place where all the kids that are walking to school from the East Village going to DeWitt Carter, that's where they're walking through that funnel. And people going to the Avondale, which is the only mom and pop store around now, the only convenience store, they're all walking through there as well. So it's highly trafficked. And I just want to make sure that it's, this isn't setting up for a real problem. So if there's ways that you can do something to combat that, it would be good. Okay, that's yeah.
I do live in Port Colborne, and I walk the French Trail on a daily basis, and I barely ever see any traffic there.
Oh well, I live there, and I can assure you that there's a lot, but that's all right. And we can have different opinions on that. Also, was there an environmental assessment done on this property?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, somebody has just told me in the last couple of days that many years ago there was a gas station on it. Now I don't know that. As long as I've ever known, there was a donut shop.
Yeah, that's
so
all.
Yeah. But I just thought I'd tell you that so you'd know. There may be a problem. I don't know. I really don't know. So
yeah, I was told that there was a shop there and it was above ground. Like there was no.
Yeah, that would be right. For the donut shop, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was in there, so I do know that. But in any case, I just would like to bring your attention to the traffic problem and to the way that the cars are going to come in and out of that particular site. Other than that, I'm really very happy to see more housing being built. So it's a good thing. I'm just worried about the traffic issue. But that's it. Thank you.
Yep. Anybody else have any questions? Not seeing any. Other than the correspondence received from the neighbor, we will note that in the decision that was considered. So with that, if there's no other questions or comments, does anyone have a recommendation? Eric?
In application A09-21-PC, part of lot 17 on plan 849, municipally known as 142 Fraser Street, that minor variance application A09-21-PC be granted, subject to the conditions outlined in the staff memo to the committee on March 10th, 2021, for the following reasons. One, that it's minor in nature, as the reduction in corner side and rear setbacks, as well as an increase in lot coverage, is a reasonable and measured request. Two, appropriate for development of the site, since the proposed dwelling will be located in a suitable location on the site and will provide an addition dwelling unit. Three, desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw, as semi-detached dwellings are permitted in the R2 zone. Four, desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the official plan, as residential uses are permitted in areas with the urban residential designation.
Thank you. Can I get a seconder to that? Angie? Questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? That'll be carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too.
You too.
All right. So with all of those applications done, the only thing we have left is any other business. Oh my, hands everywhere. Eric first and then Gary.
To you, Mr. Chair, and to the rest of the committee. That bylaw that we were discussing before, the entrance bylaw, so where are we looking at it right now, or like what's going on with that? Because if not, maybe, I know we're already counselors and we can most of us are counselors and we can bring it up at council, but maybe the committee can write a memo and send it to council, and then we pull it and can discuss, addressing that bylaw. So I'm just wondering what's happening and what action we should take moving forward on that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, if I could jump in to Member Beauregard's question. Planning staff have been trying to work with engineering staff to address these concerns ahead of time before they come to the committee. We always get the answer that staff are too busy and don't have time at this time, but I feel that a direction from council would be helpful in order to get the process moving. Obviously, I can't make that direction because I'm from planning and it's engineering's bylaw. So maybe if a councillor could bring that up to look for a direction to staff, that would be helpful.
Eric, to
Yes.
the same point.
Yes, to the same point. Just maybe we should, as a committee, create a memo and send that to council, and we can address it that way, because I've seen other committees do that before council as well. So that would be my recommendation. So I'll listen to what other people have to say.
Okay, Gary.
Yes, this is where I was going, where Eric was with his comments. In addition to that, though, through you to David. David, is there would there be a particular point person in engineering that would deal with this issue as it pertains to entrances for parking? Because it would be not, because here's my concern is the bylaw's got to be replaced, I think, with perhaps something that isn't vintage 1981. And so I think we can go two ways. We can go as counselors and make a motion to have this reviewed and changed. Or, David, do you see some important points that should be crafted into it as with respect to planning? Because I mean, I would love it to be a collaborative effort if it needs to be. If it doesn't, only because I'd like to get it right the first time out, and it'd be nice to come kind of with a consensus. And so, in your discussions with engineering, they might be too busy, but do they recognize its date is antiquated per today's standards and buildings?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Member Bruno, they have indicated to me on numerous occasions that they also wish the bylaw was not in place, but that's what they're working with now. So it's come up in a number of instances, not only at the committee, but just with driveway entrances in general for new building permits, where this bylaw essentially stagnates a parcel because it can't meet these restrictive guidelines in their policy document.
So is there a point person there that would be the one working on this?
So through you, Mr. Chair, to Member Bruno, Eliza Durant in engineering is the one that issues municipal consent permits for entrances and curb cuts. She works under Brian Kostick, so those would be the two that I deal with on most occasions. However, my director, Dan, and Chris, the new director of Public Works, have also discussed this and have both noted that it's in dire need of an update.
Well, I agree with Eric that I think we ought to put forward a motion only on the basis. It's too bad it wasn't, our meeting wasn't the old respect, because I talked to both Eliza and Brian today on another matter, and we tried to put a bug in their ear. But, I don't think this is just, this is a engineering bog down. It's a planning bog down. It's a committee of adjustment bog down. And now it's also going to be a council bog down and a clerk who has to put it forward at a council meeting. And so it's pretty cross jurisdictional just using that. And I think, maybe it's even, I don't know how other council members feel, but maybe it's really the way to go about this is CAO clerks driving this to ask engineering to get it done, because they're the recipient of all the follow-up work. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Angie and then Eric.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would agree with everything Eric and Gary are saying, but I think that you both would agree that sometimes things take a long time. Collaboration takes the longest. So, and I think we need to get this moving. So, sending a direction or a request to council to direct staff, and that's what we need to do as councillors. I'll put that little hat on for a minute, but as councillors, what we need to do is direct staff, whatever staff it needs to be, direct staff to review this, make the appropriate changes, come back with something to council, and put a time limit on it. That's all. We just need to do that, because you can't keep sitting and waiting for them to get it together and figure a way to be collaborative. That, you know how long that could take. 3 years. Well, I don't want to wait 3 years, so let's do it that way. I think Eric had the right idea right off the bat. Let's send it over to council and let council take it from there. We can have this conversation yet again, only in council chambers, and we can make sure that we're very clear to direct staff to get over there, get it reviewed, and make the changes. That's all I have to say.
Eric and then Gary.
To you, Mr. Chair. Well, it's through you to the council, to the committee. One thing I can foresee us being told is that there's actually a lot of these type of bylaws that are old, and I think that staff want to review them, want to review more than just the one. They want to look at several of them. So I think we could foresee that becoming maybe a problem, because they may want to adjust them all around the same time. But I do think that this is of more importance, and we should put this kind of right up front and see if we can get that ahead of time. That's all.
Gary?
I agree, but I think that, obviously this is the one that are bylaws that are now having to get waived by council, and there's developers who are having to write in. The whole thing is a lot of work for something everybody agrees shouldn't be there. And so that's just echoing what everybody's said up to now. But what I do think is, I agree with Angie that it's an open council thing. But to Eric's point, I think we've got to come to the council with one of us creating the motion or the words surrounding it. And that's still something, I don't know, David, if you can help us, but, Eric, one of us can try, but then we're going to circulate. I think we really need a staff person to help us with how do we phrase this. It's not complicated, but I'd like to get it right. So I don't know if, David, if you could assist in the wording, unless someone on the committee wants to take a stab at the wording. But I don't think we want to start from, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we want to start by just raising the problem. We want to raise the problem, tell council what the problem is, and here's our motion, or here's our direction that we want council to vote on.
Yeah, if I might, I think we're all in agreement with that. If you want to do it with a starting point of a memo from this committee, Eric, if you want to bring forward a draft for the next meeting and we can put that forward, or if you have something prepared now that you want to read in, then we can vote on that we all agree to, we could do that too. As far as a recommendation from the committee, to be quite frank, I wouldn't necessarily be in favor of that. We're supposed to be an adjudication body here, as opposed to the lawmaker body. I don't think judges send reports to the government to say, here, this is the law that you should write. But you are all counselors. So I'm in favor with the motion to push it. If you want to use that as a basis to draft something to take to council yourself as a councilor member item, or through a staff member, or however you want to do it. But I don't think it should come from this committee as here's the recommended change to the bylaw.
I
that
agree.
Perspective, but as the councilors, I think that is your duty as councilors to make that happen. So I'll go, Donna, you had your hand up, and then back to Angie.
Thank you, Dan. I agree with you. We wear two hats, and it's really difficult. And I think that we can ask for this to come forward, but we can't push it too hard, because, we are almost not quite the majority of council too sitting here. Yeah. So this is a pretty dicey road to go down. So I think we really need to be careful and just put it forward that we're coming across it, and ask it to be looked at that way, and rather than
Okay.
too heavy-handed.
Angie?
Thank you. Again, through you, I would agree with what Donna said as well. I don't want to see this motion coming from us in this body. I don't want to see this motion coming from us as counselors either. I want us to, as counselors, to direct staff to sit down and get it done and bring it back to us with their recommendation. Because they're the experts. We're not. We're there to make decisions on the information they bring us. We're not there to try to be the experts on this. So I would like staff to do this. They are the experts and we should be listening to it. That's all I got.
Gary, real quick, and then Eric.
Well, maybe the word motion is the wrong word, but somebody's got to raise it as a problem. So I think we're saying the same thing, Angie.
I think the memo idea is fine. I have no issues with raising it as a memo. We have this concern. Please, council, get someone to do something.
And I would also like it not to be from the committee for reasons of, if anything, just timelines. I mean, my God, if we waited to come back here and then waited to go to council, it also delays a thing that's happening every month now. So we don't have 4 councilors is not a council meeting. And so if Eric did want to write something, there's no problem in discussing that amongst councilors, because all it is a query to staff that we have a problem, and this is what it is, and we want you to sort it out with the proper wording. And I think that why I'm saying this is because, well, I think it would be great if Eric could circulate it amongst the 4 of us, and it still does not bastardize the system.
Okay, I'm good with that. Anyone else have any other business? Going once, going twice. Minutes from the February 9th meeting, a mover and a seconder. Eric, Gary, questions, comments, all in favor? Be carried. Motion to adjourn. Gary, Eric, all in favor? That'll be carried. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next month.
Thanks.
Good night, everyone.